All right, Nick, we are going to follow a creation, fall, redemption story arc, talking about your story. But as I ask you questions, all you need to do is be honest. And we're going to start with your parents. And so, right after I finish asking you a series of questions, you can answer as many as you can think of, or ask me to restate them if you need to. But we want you to tell us a little bit about your parents. Were your parents married? Were they separated, divorced, unmarried when you were born?
They were unmarried.
Okay. Were they young when they had you? Were they old? Were you first child, middle child?
Pretty young. I'm not sure how old my dad was. My mom was about 20. She was 21, about to turn 22. And I'm the oldest.
Okay.
My mother's
3. Your mother's 3.
Yeah.
What are your siblings, boys, girls?
I have a younger brother I'm about 2 years older than, and a sister I'm about 10 years older than.
Okay. Do you know what your dad did for a living?
Yes, I have an idea. As far as I know, he did illegal things such as sell drugs and some of those things. Not funny, but so that's as far as I know. It's very
okay.
Yeah.
What did your mom do for a living?
She when I was in the womb, she was working at Taco Bell.
Okay.
Probably why I didn't like Mexican food for a long time afterwards. But then she pretty much worked at an airport, and she's a parking attendant, essentially.
Okay. Where were you born?
Norfolk, Virginia.
Tell us about Norfolk, Virginia.
Norfolk, Virginia is a city with a lot of black people are there. I pretty much went to all black elementary school, middle school, and high school.
Okay.
So I had very little interaction with white people, even though there's quite a few white people in Norfolk. But I grew up in Section 8 housing. So very much so had a very limited scope and experience outside of the urban, context.
Did you grow up going to church? What was the spiritual climate of you?
Sporadically. When we got on my mom's nerves, I think she just wanted to get like a day off, so she had sent me with my aunt. And so we would go sporadically to church from time to time. And then, but then from about, I say after like 10 or 11, we kind of took pretty much a hiatus. We weren't really going almost at all at that point.
Okay. What is your first memory of your father? And then tell us your first memory of your mother, and then tell us first memory of your parents together.
Okay, so my father, I only have one memory, or two of them. I literally can only remember seeing him twice in my life. So one when I think I was around 5 or 6, I'm not 100% sure. And I still remember he came and had all this black on, like he was just blacked out, pretty big dude. And I remember giving him a hug. The lights was off, so like I remember giving him a hug. So I still to this day can kind of get that smell. Like I know how he smelled.
Yeah.
But then the second time I saw him, he was actually in his casket.
Okay. How old were you?
11, I think, 10 or 11.
Okay.
So, and then with my mother, my first interaction with her.
Yeah, your first memory of her.
Sheesh. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know what my first memory of my mother is.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. Do you have a memory? I mean, you saw your dad that night, but do you have were your parents together that night, or do you have really no memory of your parents?
No, because pretty much, I mean, they had me, and then he went off to prison. He got out, and then they had my brother. Pretty much went off to prison, and then that was it. As far as I never really knew them as a couple together. You know what I mean? So,
okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. What is your fondest memory from your childhood?
I think just the family gatherings. Like I had a really close-knit family. So between my cousins and my aunts, my mom's a twin. So her and her twin was connected to the hip. So they did everything together. So it means all my cousins and I, we did everything together. So I think just the times where we would go out collectively, we'll go eat, or we'll just go and just, just do fun stuff on the weekends together. Like, my family was very tight knit like that, and so those are probably some of my fondest memories as a child. Just really recognizing the importance of family and like those close bonds.
Yeah.
Essentially. Yeah.
Did you have any dreams as a kid? Things that you wanted to be when you grew up? Things that you wanted to do?
Yes. I originally wanted to. I wanted to be a pediatrician. But then I recognized I got to ninth grade and I was like, oh man, there's a lot of years of schooling. I think I'm gonna have to find something else. So I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna be a pediatrician. But in between that, I always wanted to be a basketball player, potentially go to the NBA.
Yeah.
Like most of the people I grew up with.
Yeah.
But I think in the back of my mind, I still was very cognizant that that may not be my reality.
Okay.
And then eventually, I got to JMU, and I thought I wanted to do engineering, and at the time they didn't have an engineering program. But then, so I did computer information systems because I was like, I can make money that way, even though I had no desire to work with computers.
Yeah.
And then I felt like God was convicting me to switch my major to communications. And so then, subtly, it's crazy because subtly, when I look back over my life, like my desire, I always had a desire to work with youth. Even when I was 16, working with my aunt, she was over a recreation center. And that was my first job, working in a recreation center, working with younger children. And I always had a desire to want to work with youth. And I think that's partly why I wanted to be a pediatrician as well.
Okay, you have mentioned your aunt twice.
Okay.
Is this your mom's twin?
This is actually my other aunt.
Okay.
So I had two aunts. And so my mom's really close, obviously, with her twin. And then her older sibling. She was actually the first generation college student, I think, in our family. So she graduated from Norfolk State University.
Okay.
And so she was the more, I guess, educated one, had a lot more resources and things of that nature and experiences. So she helped me get my first job and things of that nature. She kind of introduced me to that whole recreational youth element.
Would you say she had the most impact on you as a child? Or who would you say had the most
impact? The crazy part is
she's
like, I wasn't even that close to her, but I feel like God used her to have an impact in me understanding more what I was passionate about, because she kind of worked in those areas as well. But the most impactful person, I mean, it would have to be, my mother, just because. Just seeing, always hindsight is 20/20, but like seeing all the stuff that she endured and trying to raise two boys and a girl, and just like having to work and cook and do all these other things, I just admire her strength and just her perseverance at times. Yeah.
Yeah. What would you say is your most significant memory?
Okay. It's a hard question. Let's see. I think my most, it shouldn't be that hard to think about your most significant memory, but I honestly, it's kind of sad, I guess, but I probably now, looking back on it, I think my most significant memory, it has to be one or two things. I don't know which one takes more, but one is seeing my father and in his casket, and I remember being at his funeral. My mom told us probably a week before, so a couple of days before, that our dad had died, and like we were going to his funeral. I was like, okay, cool, not cool, but like okay, like we never see this guy. So then going there and seeing him in his casket, but then like sitting there, and I was a pretty sensitive kid, gentle kid, like. I wasn't a crybaby, but I felt things hard,
Yeah.
Pretty compassionate. So like sitting there and seeing everyone cry around me, and I'm like, wow, this is my dad. So I'm like, and trying to make myself cry for him, but I couldn't, and my little brother is even crying. I'm like, what you crying for? Like, you know him less than I did. So
Yeah.
It's like, but that's significant for me now, because I always wondered why I couldn't cry for him.
Yeah.
And then so obviously, as I grew up, it was like, man, I never had any connection with him. Now, I remember sitting there in my 11-year-old self trying to finds a memory to connect with him. And I didn't have any apart from that memory I shared with you before.
Yeah.
I didn't have anything to draw from. And I think that's a huge thing that has motivated me to wanting to be a father, to wanting to work with other youth who grew up without dads, because no one should ever have to experience that type of disconnection from their father. You know what I mean? I think that had kind of been significant in birthing passion in me. I think looking back, I don't think in the moment it was just another moment, but now looking back, I'm like, oh wow, I think that was something that really struck me, as I moved forward. And the second thing I think would have to be getting cut from my high school basketball team my senior year. Basketball was my heart, my passion, and spent so much time and energy, like just dedicating to the game and getting better, and and really getting cut by the coach where, it's a long story, but like essentially getting cut by the coach who were like, I was doing all the private workouts and then I ended up pulling the muscle on my back, had to sit out for a while, came back time for trials, and then like he cut me, but there was no explanation. And I knew they had a really good team. They went on to win the state championship that year, which was great. And I knew a lot of those guys. I was happy for them. But it was one of those things where it was like, the point that he didn't give me an explanation, like, really rocked me. Because at that point, I was trying to grow my relationship with the Lord. And I was like, God, man, I was going to bring all these people to church. Like, I was going to do all this stuff. And I think that is what sparked for me to really understand who God was.
Yeah.
Because I was the only one going to church in my household. I was, and we was going to the 8 o'clock service with my aunt, who was my mom's twin. She actually started going to church, and I started going to church with her.
Okay.
So I'm like, I think I looked at salvation, my relationship with the Lord is like, well, look at all these things I'm doing. Like, my peers are not doing these things. They're not dedicated as such, waking up this early and stuff. So I couldn't understand, because I was so work-based, I couldn't understand why, I dedicate time and energy, I'm reading my word, like, why wouldn't you grant this to me? Because it's a huge desire of my heart. But then, obviously, it was more of an idol for me at that point.
Yeah.
And I think God has shown me, like, look. So, like, when I didn't get it, it actually made me delve into God's word more. Like, I was like, God, I need to really understand who you are, because you don't make sense to me right now.
Yeah.
And I'm really hurting. And I don't understand why you didn't give me what was my heart's desire. I worked so hard for it. And I think that really sent me deeper into really beginning to understand who God is and what he was calling me to.
Okay.
So
it's
a long explanation.
So both, when you look at the significant memory of not really having memories of your dad and not being able to cry for him, and then looking at cut, no real explanation.
Right.
But during that time, you said you started going to church with your aunt. What made you want to go to church with your aunt? Did you just have this more responsibility where you're like, I'm the oldest, or what sparked that?
Yeah, I don't want to sound super spiritual, but there was a man who was going door to door evangelizing in our neighborhood. And again, like I said, I always, I shared this with you once, part of it anyway. So like, I feel like God's always been able to allow me to see things through people's eyes, you know what I mean? Like a joy, a sadness, or something like that, Yeah. So like, I remember opening the door, he was like, and basically he was trying to share the gospel. And I honestly don't remember anything he said, for the most part. I know he was trying to talk about God to me. But I remember looking in his eyes, and I was just like, man, there's something there. Like, now I know it was joy. Like, this man was filled with the Spirit, and you can tell the joy that was in his eyes and the contentment from the Lord. But it just captivated me, and he asked me to I go to church, and I lied to him. I was like, yeah, we go to church and stuff like that. So I was just trying to get him to move on, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I remember shutting the door, and then, long story short, so like every Sunday that came past, I felt like I was supposed to be somewhere. And I started feeling this like pit, like in my gut, like I'm supposed to be somewhere. I'm like, man, the only place I know people go on Sundays is church.
Yeah.
So that kind of, and then my aunt, so that's when I asked my aunt if I could start going with her. And so that's kind of how my journey with my personal church experience started.
Yeah.
With the Lord.
When would you say, I made the decision to follow Jesus? I knew I was a sinner. I turned from my sin. I trusted Jesus to save me.
Sheesh, that was such a process. You know what I mean? Because I think, again, I was still so wrapped up in the work aspect of it, because I was like 16 when I did that. So then for me, going to the church for a year or so, and then I had this conviction to want to join the church. You know what I mean? I think at the time I was like, me going up to the front and just wanting to be a part of the church body per se was kind of a significant deal for me. It was like me overcoming and saying, you know what, like, God, I want to get to learn more about you. So I want to be committed to this body of believers in a sense to want to grow with you. So not that I took that as my salvation, but I think to some degree, I took that as me want to make a commitment more to say, God, I really want to learn more about you.
Yeah.
So I would say over that, so between 17 and 18, I think there was just a time I started dealing with, I know there was a confession, like there was a confession, but more there was a belief in my heart that God was like, I belong to you. Like, I want you. Like, and I think along that, I started struggling with pornography and things of that nature. And I think I started seeing, like, I was a pretty disciplined person growing up. So, like, if I set my mind on something, 9 times out of 10, I could achieve it, because I do the steps that's necessary and I make the sacrifices. So, I think, again, when I was struggling with pornography and then I couldn't break it, and when I was like, okay, I think this is messing my relationship up with the Lord. Like, I feel like two different people. I feel like I'm really torn apart. And, like, I couldn't stop.
Yeah.
And, like, it scared me because that was the first time in my life where I felt like I couldn't stop. And that's when I knew I had addiction, because I wanted to stop, but I couldn't.
Yeah.
And so then I was like, God, like, I need your help. And I feel like in that process was the first time I genuinely, even though I was walking with the Lord for a little over a year, but a lot of it was under my own strength. And I think that was the first time that I literally, petitioned to the Lord, and I was like, God, like, I need you to take this from me, because I recognize that we can't be intimate. Like, we can't really have a relationship. Like, I can't do this, and I want to take this from me, because God showed me, it's like, this is breaking my heart.
Yeah.
And so, like, okay, God, I want to give it up, but I'm struggling, so it was, and I remember God he just took the desire away from me. Like, he really did. Like, not saying that there's never any temptation to lust and things of that nature by any stretch, but that desire to want to look at it, God just removed from my heart.
Yeah.
And I think kind of, that's why I say it's kind of been a process. God, like, as the more I begin to see God for who he is and recognize, like, God wasn't just calling Dominique to live the Christian life, because that's what I thought. Like, I need to live out all this word, not recognizing I already have fallen short of the standard. Like, I was already a sinner. I already needed Jesus. I didn't understand that, partly because no one ever really walked with me through the scriptures in that part of my life, So it was me trying to please God, because I was a people pleaser, and me trying to please God now. He began to show me and said, Dominique, there's nothing you can do to deserve. So, like, as that process continued to unfold, I was like, okay, cool. Like, okay, I recognize I am a sinner, clearly, through the addiction of pornography and stuff like that. I think that was something that was very relevant for me to see my sin.
Yeah.
And I think in seeing that, I recognized how much I needed his help. And so, like, I feel like, so I feel like that was kind of my, I don't know, the salvation, but as well as the sanctification portion. Like, I never have like a clear cut, man, this was the day, but like, there's been such a process where I just know there were so many times, and to be honest, a lot of times I didn't know if I was saved because I kept doing things, so it was like, I was the first one to run to an altar, because I'm like, God, like, I believe I love you and I know you, but I was so focused on the work aspect, I didn't really understand grace, even though I know I was a believer, because my heart was very repentive. I didn't know at the time, because I was so fearful, because I'm like, I can't do it. Like, I can't sustain this.
Yeah.
So God continued to just show me his grace. But I would say I legit believed in Jesus and in his sacrifice between 17 and 18. for sure.
So junior, senior year?
Junior, senior, more going, pretty much senior year.
Okay.
Yeah, junior, senior, in a junior year, going into senior year, essentially. Yeah.
And then you want to go to JMU, you decide to go to JMU. How does that work? How did you get to JMU?
They actually came, JMU was on this diversity initiative, just thankfully, it helped me out, man. But so they came to our school and it was like, look, we're gonna do all these things for you guys, and we want you to come to our school, come for a visit. And I remember going up there for a visit, and I was like, wow, this is a beautiful place. Like, this is just so unique. And excuse me. I said, this is so unique. And then, like, when I went there, something in my heart just kind of leapt. Like, I was like, I want to be here. Like, I need to be here. And then, so, like, at that point, I was fixed on going to JMU. So I sent my application in and stuff and waiting for a letter back in the mail. And then one of my friends, then he also was going. He got a letter back. So we was going to be roommates and everything. And then, so I got a letter back that said I was rejected. So it really just broke my heart because I was like, God, like, I thought this is what you had for me. And again, I think that common thing of rejection was always coming up in my life, you know, between basketball and then like, okay, now Lord, I'm set on this and I feel like this is what you have for me. But then I received a rejection letter in the mail. So I'm just like, okay, you know what? Maybe this is not what you have for me, God. And I remember my friend was also, you know, developed into my best friend at the time as well, Demetrius. I remember, I think I got that rejection letter on a Wednesday. And then he was like, man, you need to go up there and talk to somebody. I was like, man, I'm good. Like, I'm not, they already said they don't want me. I'm not going up there and embarrass myself. But I prayed about it that night. And so I went up with my school that Friday. They were going up. So I went up and then they was telling all this stuff they was going to give to the kids. And like, you know, and all these opportunities. And I'm just sitting there like getting wrecked. Like, why did I come up here? Talked to a man named Dr. Davenport. Who I was just like, man, I just want to know why I got rejected. I wasn't even like, hey, like, I need to be in this school. I was just like, man, why did I get rejected? I just wanted to know, like, what a part of my credentials wasn't good enough. And it was crazy because a lot of my friends were interviewing for the Centennial Scholarship Program, which is basically a financial-based scholarship that turned into an academic scholarship. So they were going into their interviews, and I guess they were mentioning my name, so much so that they asked me to come into the room. And so, like, after I talked to Dr. Davenport, he said he was going to see what he can do. Then I went into the Centennial Scholarship room, and they was just like, hey, what made you come up here? Da, da, da. I was like, you know, I really wanted to come to this school, and I was, you know, da, da, da. And then they started asking about my strengths and weaknesses, and they, like, slowly just kind of, it was like 7 or 8 people in the room, and they just slowly kind of it felt like an interview type thing, you know. So I just shared my heart, you know. And then, long story short, I remember going back home, and then people kept asking me, where are you going to school? And I was like, James Madison. And even though this is after I knew I got rejected, and I was like, God, like, I don't want to sound like a lion, but I want to walk by faith too, you know. So that was a very, you know, slippery slope. I guess that I felt like I was lying to people, but like in my heart, I still felt compelled to be there, and like I was expecting God to do something. And I remember laying in my bed. This is probably another significant memory for me as I think about it. I was laying on the top bunk, and my brother stayed in bunk beds, and I remember waking up that morning to my mom screaming on the phone, like a joyful scream. And like it woke me up. I jumped out of bed. I ran downstairs like, Mom, are you straight? Like, everything good? And she was like, Dr. Davenport just called, and they just said they got you into the school. And I was just like, what? And he's like, not only that, they're working on getting you the scholarship, Centennial Scholarship. So within a couple weeks, you know, I went from being rejected to being accepted to having a full scholarship to the school. You know, and I think that was another significant moment for me, really seeing another part of God and saying, this is my sovereignty, and me being able to do the impossible. Like, so when I went into my freshman year, you know, it makes me tear up. It's crazy. When I went into my freshman year, I still was like, God, like, man, I know I'm only here because of you. Like, I know I'm only here because you opened this door.
Yeah.
So, like, I was like, I'm dedicating my whole college career to you.
Yeah.
You know, my whole career. And I remember So,
That's cool, man.
yeah, but I remember like just going through the motions of like, you know what, like I still was dealing with that feeling like, am I good enough? Can I maintain a 3.0? Can I get these 100 hours of community service? Like, and I remember being so focused, when I came in and I got exactly 3.02 GPA and did 200 hours of community service and then did all the other little things. And I'm not saying that to boast, but it was like, God began to show me that, Dominique, you just have no idea what I put in you, and what I have for you, and it's like, and the reason it hits me so hard is because, I met Cal Welsh, who was, obviously the son of Jim Welsh, which connected me to you, which was a significant relationship. It helped change, be built into me spiritually, helped change gave me a lot of stuff I needed foundationally to grow as a man. And then that also, led to me working here. Obviously, now being here full time, met my wife there, met all my lifelong friends there, was in my wedding.
Yeah.
So, and it's just crazy because a part of me, when I had that feeling of rejection, I was like, I wasn't even going to fight for it, even though I knew it was still, like, I feel compelled to it, and I thank the Lord for Demetrius, too, for just speaking life to me in that moment, because it was like, I want to fight for this, but I've been hurt so much, I don't know if it's worth it, but like, then like, I'm so glad I went there because even thinking back, I'm like, oh my goodness, like, you better get on that bus, like, that's what I was telling myself now, like, no questions about it.
Yeah.
You don't know how many relationships God has already set up for you. And that's when I realized me feeling compelled to go to JMU was definitely a God thing. It was really Him by His Spirit, I think, just urging me to like fight for this. Like, this is important.
Yeah.
And then on hindsight, looking back on it, you're like, oh my gracious, like, I can't believe I considered almost going somewhere else and not fighting for it.
Yeah.
So
that's good. So now, what would you say is one word that totally describes you?
Pursuit, I would say. I'm always longing to be better, and ultimately, now for me, it's not so much the work aspect. Now more just like, God, I really want to grow in your grace. Like, I want to grow in understanding your heart, like understanding who you are and the totality of just spending the rest of my life knowing you and growing in you and showing that love and displaying that grace and like helping other people to see the trueness of who you are, so I think, pursuit, because I don't think I would never have enough, whether in my relationship with the Lord, whatever I achieve, I guess, none of those things really matter to me in a bigger scheme. Like, it's just like, there's always another level of intimacy and relationship. There's always another level of obedience and understanding. Like, and that's what I love about the Lord. You can never tap him out, Yeah. So, yeah.
And you graduated from JMU.
Yeah.
Go Dukes, currently national champions.
Let's go.
You come and work here, Summer's Best 2 weeks. You end up getting married.
Right.
You graduate from JMU 2010.
Yep.
You come on staff here as a student ministry associate, and then 2012, you guys get married. Tell us a little bit about Sheree, and then tell us a little bit about your relationship with Sheree.
Okay. It's funny, you always ask, I was single all 4 years in college, hoping, really just like, God, like, whoever she is, I need you to make it very plain and clear for me. But also through some of your challenges as well, maybe I feel like I ask a lot more questions than normal freshmen ask, going into school and want to dibble and dabble a little bit. But I just had a heart really more just like, God, like, I came out of a relationship my senior year. This explains it, but I came out of a relationship my senior year, kind of missionary day in a relationship I shouldn't have been in. And And I think we weren't physically intimate or anything, but there was a lot of emotional connections. And I think after giving up that relationship, because the Lord kept bringing a verse of being unequally yoked, because she wasn't even a believer, and I also was like, well, let me just, I'm gonna share these Bible stories with her. I'm gonna try to get her to a place that ultimately God was like, no, you're unequally yoked. You need to give that relationship up. And so eventually, long story short, I gave that up. But I also made a commitment to say, okay, the next woman I date will be my wife. Like, I don't want to take anybody through that emotional tour. Long story short, so I never considered Sheree as my spouse, which is funny because I always went through that process with people of like, oh, God, is this the person you're calling me to be with? Is this the person you're calling me? And probably because she was in a relationship, through college. So, excuse me. She was in a relationship in college, and I was like, I'm not going, whether I agree with it or not, I'm not going to dive into that. I want somebody to respect mine, you know what I mean? Well. So, yeah, and so, like, again, it wasn't until she became a believer at the end of her sophomore year. So we weren't in the same circles, freshman and sophomore year. And then junior year, so she joined DURAC, which is the ministry we was a part of in college. And then by senior year, we were all graduating, so we all was kind of in the same circle. So I began to notice her a lot more, and just her heart and just who she was. I remember we went to Chicago on a mission trip, and there was like 5 people in the car. I was sitting in the back seat, she was driving, and there was like, a couple other people, 3 more people in the car. And like everybody was knocked out. And I switched in her car because I could talk if I feel up to it, and they needed someone to keep her up. So like literally everyone either went to sleep or cats was just acting like they would sleep just to hear us talk. We talked like for 5 hours straight about her relationship with the Lord, her relationship with her dad, my relationship. It was, even though it was so many people in the car, it felt so intimate. Like, but it was just like, wow. I was like, man, she's a legit, believer. Like, she has a legit heart for the Lord. Like she very young in her faith, but still like very genuine, and that's what I loved about her. So like, long story short, and then so I didn't think too much about it, but we always kept having little connections through my senior year, which is funny because I used to go to class in the building called ISAT, and like I used to always see her. She'd be sitting in it's like this little 2-seater thing, a little coffee table area, and I go, I'm like, hey, and I end up talking to her, like, on the way to class, and I sometimes used to go up a little earlier, just wondering if she would be there, and we'll talk for like 10 minutes every now and then. No lie, when we got married, I said, Cherry, it's so crazy how God just ordained that and just how that always worked out. She's like, yeah, I actually used to sit there and wait. I knew you'd come that way, and I used to sit there and wait for you to come through, hoping that, we can have a conversation. I was like, wow, I ain't mad at you, that's dope. But so there was times I was frustrated when she wasn't there, and I think she was frustrated when I didn't show up. But we never actually talked about it.
Yeah.
So then, I went to Johnstown, worked there at New Day, right after graduation. And I was just like, man, like, God, I thought I would find my wife here. I thought someone, well, guess not. But she stayed there, did a grad school program for 2 years. And then Demetrius, again, asked me, I remember when I was in Johnstown, he said, have you considered Sheree, like, or thought about every day Sheree? I was like, she wasn't in a relationship at this point. And I was like, nah, like, I thought she was beautiful, pretty. First time I saw her freshman year, I thought she was pretty, but that was the extent of it. But then I just started thinking about it, I was just like, oh. And then, so I was going home over this, the kids got time off, and went to JMU. I stopped through there, and I know she was in grad school, and I stopped there, and a part of it in the back of my mind was like, oh, I get to see her. And she wasn't there, and I was frustrated. And I was like, oh no. I was like, why am I so frustrated? I was like, maybe I like this girl. I don't know. Maybe I like this girl. I'm not even sure. So I went home, hit her up over the break, and then she actually was in Florida. We just kept missing each other. She wasn't in Virginia. And so, like, when we went down to Revamp in 2011, and I was just inviting different people to come through. And I remember inviting Sheree. I was like, oh, I haven't seen her in a while. I would love to see her, And so I asked her to come up. And then I was like, you know, we talked about this ton of time. Be careful about what you communicate because you don't want to put stuff out there that you're not sure how it's gonna be received.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, come on out, like I'll take care of you guys and everything, like. And I was like, and as I was about to send this text, I was like, Dominique, do you know what you're communicating to her if you send this text? And I was just like, yeah, I do, and I still sent it, and that's when I think it clicked to me, like that very moment on the way down the revamp. I think it clicked to me that I was like, you really like this girl.
Yeah.
You don't do stuff like this.
Yeah.
And so when I saw her, it was so funny. When I remember she walked in, had my Bible in my hand. I was going up to her, drop my Bible and stuff, and started fumbling. I was like, oh no. So I like blew that opening moment. But then like from that time on, we just kept talking. And long story short, I remember our first conversation because I've been through enough experiences to where I was just like, no, look, I'm not trying to waste your time, nor I want you to waste mine. I want you to go and pray and see if this is even a friendship that God is calling you to cultivate.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do the same thing because if it's not, we're going to try to do something right now.
Ah. And
I remember praying about it, and I felt like God was giving me peace to move forward. And she felt like God was just telling her to trust. And so long story short, we just kept talking. And then as time went on, I felt like the Lord showed me towards the end of January. I was like, God, okay, either we're starting to get emotionally tied to some degree. Like,
yeah.
I really feel very fond of her. So I was like, either we're going to have to cut this off now, like, or I need you to let me know soon this is who you've called me to be with. And then not too long after that, I felt like the Lord spoke to me and said specifically, Sheree's your wife. She is your encourager. And yeah, but then he told me I couldn't tell her and stuff, so it was a whole, like months on before I just, so like, long story short, like, and then so like we just, and it's so crazy he told me she was my encourager because when I think about my wife, I always think about her being my support, you know, and she supports me through her encouragement, just how, you know, I know she always got my back, you know, and she's always looking to lift me up, you know, so it's just like, I'm so thankful for her. And that was really a God move because I'm just like, wow, man, I tried 4 years to find someone and to see, God, is this it? Is this it? You know, and then it's like when I really kind of stopped looking for it, it's like, God, I'm just satisfied with you. And then I felt like he just opened that door and it came so quickly. He made it so obvious for me. He made it so obvious for me with her.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Now you married?
Yeah.
You have 3 boys.
Right.
What's your boys' names? How old are they?
So we got Nehemiah, we got Gabriel, and Eli. So Nehemiah's about 3.5, Gabe's about 1.5, and Eli is 3 weeks.
Yeah.
About, so yeah.
Yeah. Being a dad.
Yeah.
Talk to me about being a dad.
Yeah. Being a dad. Sheesh. There was a point in my life where I wanted to be a dad more than I wanted to be a husband. And I think that's another reason why God probably made me wait a little longer.
Yeah.
It's just, I just had such a desire to want to be a dad of a son, you know, like, and I think a lot of that had to do with that significant memory I was telling you about earlier.
Yes,
just, I wanted to give to my son that I didn't receive, essentially, you know, and so being a dad, man, I think this by far has been the most, I've seen, through my wife, I've seen more of the grace aspect of the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can be there no matter what, you know, and through my children, I have seen more of the unconditional love aspect of the Lord. You know, it's just like, you know, man, these guys believe in me so much, you know, like, doesn't really matter. I can come in the house stressed out, you know, feeling, you know, overwhelmed or like frustrated, and then they just run up and, you know, call my name or just give me a hug, and it's just like, they believe I can just do about anything at this point, you know, and it's just like so humbling, you know, but like, there's so many ways that God speaks to me through them, and being able to see like, Dominique, and more now, it's like, you're starting to understand what the heart of the Father is.
Yeah.
You know, like, I spent the first part really just trying to understand, like, and it's crazy because what drew me into a relationship with the Lord, which I said, that's why I said, like, exactly when that moment was, I couldn't tell you, but what drew me in a relationship with the Lord is the aspect of him being a father. Honestly, more than the idea of me needing a savior and things of that nature. God drew me in, which is the idea of like, huh? How are you a dad? Like, I can't see you, can't feel you. Like, how are you calling yourself father to those who come after you? And so, like, I began to want to understand what it meant to be a son, and then what it meant to be a man. And I feel like the Lord began to show me those things, and then a husband. And then now I'm really understanding the heart of a father towards a son, versus the first part was understanding more of the son's pursuit of the father.
Yeah.
God is really starting to like, Dominique, look at the way that you love them and the way that you care for them. And you being imperfect, how much greater do you think my love is?
Yeah.
Like, for me towards you. And I was like, oh my goodness. Like, I feel like I understood that on a principle level, but practically and tangibly, is a whole nother monster for me in a good way.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So now, as a dad, as a husband, who would you say are the people that mean the most to you? Like close friends, mentors? Who are the people that you share a foxhole with, talk to when you are hurt, need advice?
Right. For sure, yourself. You're definitely one of those people for me. Amir and Jamar are two guys as well that we just been through so much together. Amir specifically from freshman year on, seeing his conversion experience and being able to see him walk in his relationship with the Lord. It's just been, he is my example of God doing the impossible and God's grace, and like when you plant a seed and water a seed and let God see and God produces the increase. Jamar is more of my Barnabas, like just my encourager, just like we walk through a lot of stuff together as well, and just a little subtle encouragement along the journey to keep moving forward. And you for sure are a friend / mentor, like a Paul for me. And I think in so many ways have helped shape how I view manhood. And God has shaped so much through you and just challenging. I think one of the biggest things I've taken from what God has done in your life through me, well, 2 things, well, maybe 3 things. But, well, one, significantly, is just being able to like look at stuff through a biblical worldview, like having, like looking to say, hey, what does the Bible say about this? How is the Bible informing, in context, how is the Bible informing how you live, what you eat, what you say, all these things, like holistic living.
Yeah.
And I feel like that relationship with you was the first time a man can, and I had men along the way that God had just planted seeds along the way, but I think through you was the first time like the holistic part of living through a biblical worldview was kind of promoted. And I think after graduating from college, even though I thought you was just streaming a lot of stuff, the older I get, but seriously, the older I get, the more I recognize like, nah, I get it. I get it completely, and but like but also I think after graduating and moving up here and living in Johnstown, and then for the last 6 years or so before coming here, I think being able to see your family, you with your family, you with your wife, your children, and seeing literally all your children grow up, it's just like just being able to see the aspect of have somewhat of a general guideline for a husband and a father and things like that was just so significant for me, I think, in my life. And I shared this with you before, I have so much hurt when it comes to men, and a lot dealing with the lack of relationship with my dad. So a lot of times I still don't open up as I should and things of that nature. But it's just been really cool. And Demetrius will always, man, we're not as close now, but like he's very much so like my Jonathan and David relationship. God has sowed so many seeds on the front end as well through him to just helping me to get a more biblical literacy, but also thinking of things more effectively, how to do things a little bit more efficiently, which I didn't really appreciate that much on the front end because I always felt kind of stupid, like I couldn't figure out the right way to do stuff, and he had figured it out, and I had to learn how to appreciate that from him, and so he always had a huge part of my heart as well. So, yeah.
That's awesome. You look at the next 10 years of your life.
Okay.
tell me where you see yourself. Tell me where you see your family.
Okay.
Here you are the Director of Staff Affairs and Development. So tell me
Yeah.
where you see yourself in the next 10 years.
I tend to try not to think that far. That's messing with you. I always think long term, which I love, and that's another thing I got from you through the Lord. It's just exercising long term vision. I was very much so just living a day.
Yeah.
Living a day, which is not bad, but I've learned, I feel like through you and through Demetrius specifically, God has allowed me to be able to find a balance through the Spirit of the Lord of exercising vision,
Yeah.
but also living in the moment. So I say that because I try not to even think that far. Like I do, but at the same time, I'm just like, I definitely see myself here for sure the next 10 years. And hopefully, just as a director of staff, hopefully, man, just really just continue to grow in my craft and ability to relate to people and shepherd the people that God has put in our stewardship.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about that and just growing and more of an understanding of what my role is, my framework, so that I can be the most effective I can be to helping to shepherd people's hearts. So staffing wise, I mean, that's really just my heart in that capacity. But also like a huge thing is just growing in the community here, with the guys, with you and Brandon and Alan, Goody and Nate and Amir, and just I'm super excited about really growing a community because that's a experience that I feel like I always lack, where it's just like, God, I'm gonna give you everything, I'm gonna give to my family, I'm gonna give to the ministry, but I really open up myself to where I need God's pouring in me too, and I need to be being sharpened by other men. That's a significant call and responsibility that God has given us by faith and in His Word. So I really look forward to growing in my craft and my professionalism, etc., but also in community and just being able to be honest, open, and transparent with the men that God has put around me. And just seeing my boys grow up too, which is just, I always think about that. That I think about a lot, just what is my role, my responsibility, with those things, and just trying to be a good steward. So I don't know what it looks like in 10 years, but I'm hoping that it still is just a constant pursuit of wanting to grow in excellence and stewardship.
Last question.
Okay.
Say there's a young man out there from Norfolk, Virginia who doesn't have a great relationship with his dad, but he's 16 and searching. What would you say to him?
Best way, I'll probably share this analogy with him first. Well, it's not really an analogy, it's actually happened to me in my life. But when I was a counselor at Lake Gloria in 2008, and I remember one of the campers asked me, say, man, why are you so passionate about the Lord? Like, why, what made you pursue the Lord? And, I have been walking with the Lord for a couple of years at a point. No one's ever really asked me that question. And I remember it, and I sat there and thought about it, and I was like, to be honest, I would love to say it was the idea of just seeing Jesus and seeing my heart for sin. Like, I need Jesus, like, I'm broken. But it wasn't the miracles, it wasn't just the salvation aspect, which is obviously the most critical part. But the initial thing at 16 that really put my heart in, that made me say, God, you have me for the rest of my life, was the idea of God saying that He wanted to be my dad, And so like what I would tell that young man is just like, man, I know you may have been hurt, by the lack of relationship with your father here, but I want you to know you got a Father in heaven who cares so deeply about you. Like, He loves you so much that He's willing to not give you what you want, but to come alongside you and comfort and give you what you need.
Yeah.
He's willing to allow you to feel rejection and abandonment. Knows what it feels like to be despised, but at the same time, He comforts you in the midst of your mourning. Like, He gives you real unconditional love. Like, and there's no relationship I found where it's like so unconditional. Like, understand this. There's nothing you can do that will ever change how he looks at you.
Yeah.
You know, like, and I feel like for a kid who has never been affirmed in his manhood, who's never really been taught the ways that he should have a biblical manhood and things of that nature, he needs to understand. We need to understand that, look, first and foremost, know that you're loved unconditionally. Know that your worth and your value has already been, when you accept Jesus Christ and when you pursue that relationship with the Lord, God accepts you as his son. And in that, there's nothing you can ever do to change that. And you need to understand that, because you may feel like you've been slighted in some ways. You may feel like you should know more, and you probably won't understand that until you get older. But you can come to the point where you might feel like you've been slighted. You know, you feel like you didn't have enough, you know, or this situation, that situation. But the one thing you can understand that you will always be able to hold on to is that you have a Father in heaven who loves you, who cares for you, and he says, look, I never leave you nor forsake you.
Yeah.
And really, that's what you want. I wanted someone who would protect me, wanted someone who would pour wisdom into me, and really just to be there. I mean, I think for a 16-year-old to just understand, look, you may be thinking that you can do this stuff on your own, but I want you to know you can't.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, God doesn't want you to. I.e., that's why he sent his son Jesus down on the cross. So you can have a relationship with him. You can have that bridge and gap between your sins so that you can really begin to understand unconditional love. And so once you begin to know love and understand love, man, the sky's the limit. Because no matter where you go or what you choose to do, the beautiful part of it is that God says, I'm not going to abandon you. I'm going to discipline you.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to correct you. I'm going to build you up. And sometimes you're going to feel like I'm not there. You're going to feel like that I don't care. But I want you to know God's word is true to his character. Yeah. I'm a living testimony of it. Yeah. You trust it. You believe in it. You hold on to it. You let nobody take that from you.
Yeah.
Because God will be there, always have been. And he sees the deepest and the darkest places of your heart. And guess what? He still chooses to love you through that.
Absolutely. Tell
Tell me where else you can go find that type of love. Tell me where else can you go that, you know, someone's going to know every single ounce and part about you and still love you unconditionally to the point where it's like, not only do I love you unconditionally, but I want to continue to pour life into you. I want to continue to teach you and grow you and mature you. And that's what God offers. So much so that he gave us his son.
Yeah.
That's some of the things I would share with him.
That's a lot, Sharon. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That's awesome. No, that's good. Well, brother, thank you. And I appreciate you being open and honest and transparent. That's not an easy thing to do. So
it's not, especially on camera.
Especially on camera.
Wow.
But I thank you. I'm proud of you.
Oh,
and I love you.
I love you too, bro.
Great job, dude. You killed it.
Yeah.
That was awesome. You know the camera's still rolling, right?
Yeah.
I was going to ask you who's going to win the Super Bowl.
Well, I felt like my nose was running the whole time.